Everybody, welcome to Steelers Live. I'm Missi Matthews, and we are 2 weeks away from the 2021 NFL Draft. I am pleased to be joined today by NFL Network analyst Bucky Brooks. You can follow him on Twitter at Bucky Brooks. And Bucky, what do we need to know about this 2021 draft class? Obviously, no combine as usual. So what is the big theme when you're looking at these guys as we're getting closer to draft day?
Big theme would be a still very, very talented class. A lot of players with a lot of talent, a lot of impact potential immediately. The challenge will be, how do you deal with maybe the uneven playing field when it comes to evaluating? You have guys that have played this most recent season, guys who opted out and didn't play. You have teams who are trying to navigate around limited pro days, not a combine. And so it's really going to be a challenge for evaluators to find enough tape where you can make a strong opinion, an opinion that will lead you to make these big-time picks on players that you may not have seen since 2019 on the football field.
In your opinion, do you think this is a bigger challenge for the scouting departments across the league than last year when they did have a combine, but then the back end of the process was different?
Yeah, no, this is a much bigger challenge. It's a much bigger challenge because you have restrictions on whether you could see guys in the fall. Every part of the country wasn't open, so you couldn't necessarily get live in-person scouting on some of these prospects. You have the challenge of not having the combine where you would kind of have an opportunity to see all of the guys working back to back to back, so you can kind of sort out certain clusters of position. You don't have all the same background info and those things. So it presents a different challenge, but the one thing that I know, the best teams with the best scouts have guys that are resourceful, and they find a way to kind of work around whatever's thrown in front of them, and they'll make good decisions based on the information that they have.
After looking at all these players, I'm sure hundreds and hundreds of times, offensive or defensive draft, in which position, in your opinion, is the deepest?
I mean, it's going to be viewed as an offensive draft because you have quarterbacks and you have pass catchers. And in a fantasy football world that we live in, that always commands a ton of attention. Offensive tackle class is good, really good. Defensively, you don't have the marquee edge rushers, which is a huge change because defensively the two most important positions are your edge rushers and your cornerback. You have a very solid class of cornerbacks, solid class of linebackers. You're just lacking with those marquee edge rushers and even defensive tackles.
You mentioned the quarterbacks. All eyes are always on the quarterbacks as we head into a draft. After you have Trevor Lawrence, is there a drop-off to the next guys, or did you see somebody who's maybe separating themselves a little bit from the rest of the pack?
I would say that look, Trevor Lawrence is going to be number one, but I would say that it's really the big four. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, in whatever order you want to put them in, depending upon what style quarterback or what kind of quarterback you want, it will kind of lead you down a certain path. There's a huge drop-off, in my estimation, between those four and the next tier, which would be Mac Jones. Then you get into Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, Kyle Trask. So if you want an elite quarterback, I believe it has to be one of those first four guys. Mac Jones might be able to play at an elite level if he's surrounded by premier talent, but on his own accord, I wouldn't necessarily rate him as an elite prospect.
All right, in terms of pro days, is there anybody, a player that sticks out who increased their draft stock by their performance or something they were able to do in front of as many GMs and coaches as possible?
I would say Jalen Phillips, the pass rusher from Miami, certainly helped himself. He was a guy who was the #1 recruit in high school coming out. He started at UCLA, finds his way to Miami, didn't really know what he was going to do, and man, he lit it up. Outstanding pass rusher, great hand skills, wins consistently hand-to-hand combat battles at the line of scrimmage. And so teams that are looking for pass rushers in a class where you don't have an established pass rusher, Jalen Phillips will be the biggest beneficiary.
All right, now earlier today, the Steelers announced they brought back Vince Williams, someone that they cut earlier in free agency. I know according to your latest mock draft, the Steelers overall at 24th, you have them taking a linebacker. Does that change at all with Vince coming back and adding depth there, or would you still stick with that right now?
Well, I think when you're picking at 24, you're not able to necessarily dictate the terms. You kind of have to operate in a fluid situation, meaning, okay, we have a handful of players that we like in this situation. Who are those players? And let's just say, for instance, okay, we like Tevin Jenkins, we like Najee Harris, we like a linebacker in Xavier Collins. Those are our guys. Okay, well, let's see if any of those guys are available. You get to the pick at 24, and then you make your move. I think this is a team that has to find a way to run the ball, and they have to run it consistently. And does that mean running back, or does that mean offensive line? I would lean towards the offensive line. I think at some point the Steelers must continue to upgrade and address the offensive line situation.
Absolutely. Improving the running game after finishing last in 2020 is something from the top down everybody has said this offseason. Now, in terms of that run game, what running backs and offensive linemen do you feel fit well with what the Steelers do offensively, even though they do have a new coordinator in Matt Canada?
Offensively, at the point of attack, guys that kind of what took my fancy as Steelers would be Tevin Jenkins plays the way that I would think Pittsburgh Steelers want to play. Jalen Mayfield from Michigan is another one that kind of plays and exhibits that toughness and physicality that the Steelers typically like. Running backs, Najee Harris to me would be the perfect Le'Veon Bell 2.0 to show up in Pittsburgh, meaning a big back that can run and do all that other stuff that you want inside, but can step outside, can run routes like a wide receiver, can make plays and do that. And I'll be honest, I don't believe the offense has been the same since they lost that dynamic talent at running back. I believe they need an upgrade at the position. You can use Travis Etienne. He can do that. If you go on day two, Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, all of those guys can kind of fit. But if you ask me, I would say, man, Najee Harris in Pittsburgh to me would be a great matchup.
All right, we have seen a number of trades happen well before the draft has even taken place. Do you anticipate any more movement among teams before we get to Thursday night, day one of the NFL draft?
Oh, absolutely. I think we'll see a ton of movement because the general manager positions, you have younger guys that are manning those positions. They're not afraid of making moves. And we've seen trades and all kinds of things happen the last couple of years. It's a change of guard. It's a new way of thinking. I think the younger generation, they aren't as married to picks as they are players. And so if you have an opportunity to get good players, you're going to make the move and you don't mind giving up a king's ransom because those are unknown commodities. They rather deal with no.
All right, 2 weeks away, a lot of excitement as we get closer to the draft in Cleveland. Bucky, thank you so much for your time. And for everybody watching, again, Bucky Brooks on Twitter, and you can catch him on the Move the Sticks podcast with Daniel Jeremiah leading up to the draft to keep you up to date. So really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks so much.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of Steelers Live. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back here next Thursday at 4 p.m.